This is for the people that are specifically wanting to build a post frame porch like we do, where we use purlins. This is good if you're going to do a rafter every 2 feet and then sheathe right directly on top of it. Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. So behind me you'll see a porch that we have all of our kind of our wall post header framing, and we're ready to build the roof. Now we do it a little bit different just because we're in the post frame sector, but the theory and the method and the mathematics behind how we cut our rafters are pretty much universal, and I want to take you guys through that. So this video could be for somebody that has never cut a rafter, or it could be for somebody that just does it kind of the old-fashioned way, where they don't really know the math and nobody taught them that, so they just pull their tape measure out, they get a measurement for what they think they should be cutting, and then they just kind of cut it and fit it and go on about their way. So if you don't know, the rafter is the thing that actually supports the roof. It's the angled board that has a couple weird cuts and usually requires a little thinking. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and we're going to show you some math. Don't be alarmed. You don't have to do too much thinking if you have a good calculator on your phone. So let's go ahead and get into it. Now I don't know about you guys, but although I can conceptually learn things, I also like to see them on paper or in real life before it really gets to memory. So we're going to go ahead and do a quick drawing, and I'm going to show you how this works. So what we're going to do is, first we have this line here. This is going to represent our wall, okay? And then we're going to have this line here, and this represents the top of our header. Now, we're using a cedar header 6x6, but this doesn't really matter. This is just conceptual knowledge, right? And what we're looking to do is we're going to look to cut a rafter in. So this is not always going to be to scale, but let's see, how do we do this? Okay, so here's my rafter. And whether you're building stick frame, post frame, it doesn't matter. This theory is still going to apply. Now, what I need to know is that I already know this right here. This is 9 foot in my application, okay? I know that's 9 feet because I've already measured it, and I also know the pitch of my roof is 412. Now, if we remember back in math, if we know a couple of these dimensions, we can figure out what this diagonal dimension, I know what to cut that at. I know what this height is, so I know where to set this on the wall exactly, and I'm going to show you how I do that. So we're going to open up the Construction Master Pro. Now, like I said, I know that this is what it's called. Okay, we're going to give you a couple more terms so that you understand what I'm doing. This, I think that's spelled right. I don't know. That is called diagonal, okay? That is this dimension here, and then this 9 foot, this is called our run, and this is our rise. Now, those are just like mathematical terms, and also that is the terms that we have here to use in the buttons in our Construction Master Pro. So what I'm going to do is enter in 9 feet run, and I know that I have a 412 pitch. So you see that? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in 4-inch pitch. So it's a 4-inch out of 12-inch rise run, okay? That is going to give me a diagonal dimension of 9 foot 5, 13/16. So now I know 9 foot 5, 13/16 is this dimension, and my rise is 3 feet. All right, so basically the important thing to note here, guys, is that once you have either 2 of the 4 dimensions, run, rise, diagonal, or the pitch of this triangle, you can figure out the other 2 with the calculator app. So I definitely recommend having that. But now that we know basically the simple side of coming up with the dimensions, just to put it into a little bit of actual practice, this is really what you want to have, is a square. This will also work, but I promise you, especially on larger lumber, this just doesn't work as good because it's never going to be big enough. So we know that we're doing a 412 pitch, right? These squares have dimensions on both sides coming out from the corner, and so what you can do is, if you've never done a 412 pitch cut, it's very simple. And in the most simplest of ways, you're going to put one side on 4 and you're gonna put the other side on 12. Or I can even come on to the inside and I can go 4 and 12 because we've also got numbers coming from the inside, right? Once you've set this up at 4 and 12, hence the 4 inches of rise for 1 foot of run, this is my triangle. So I think that's pretty visible. You can now make a mark and you could cut your 412. Now what I would typically do here is I might come on down here and I might put my 4 and 12 like so, just because I'm gonna get more distance with a nice straight measurement. And then, you know, you can always either take another straight edge or something if you really wanted to be precise, line it up, and then make a full cut. Or if you don't have a rafter square, you can use just a regular, what I would call my framing square, and you're just going to put the heel of the square against your material, and you see it even says pivot, and I'm gonna pivot to my common measurements, this common rafter, COM, and I want a 412, so I'm just gonna pitch it up to the 4, where that lines up, and boom, now I have a 412 pitch, okay? So that's how you get this one right here. This is the easy one to get. It's usually a lot less steep, so when you're cutting, it's nice and easy. This guy down here, this is basically what we call I call it a reverse 412. It's basically the remainder of the 412. And I'm not gonna get into all the specifics. You get 90 degrees, and if you split it in half, you're going to get, this is about 18.4 degrees, 90 minus 18.4, I think it's like 71.6. So I would come up here to 71.6. This would be the other side of my triangle. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut one by the end of this video. I will cut one and I will show you how it fits. But this is for the people that are specifically wanting to build a post frame porch like we do, where we use purlins. This is good if you're gonna do a rafter every 2 feet and then sheathe right directly on top of it. We don't do that. We actually build a rafter that supports basically every 8 feet, and then we run purlins. There's a lot of reasons we do that, but that's not for today's video. But I am gonna show you real quickly how I calculate the rest of this rafter, because there is some more calculation to do. So let me draw this again real quick. And remember, this is probably not perfectly to scale. All right, so we've got our beam here. This is our 6x6 cedar. All right, we've got our 2x6 fascia on this end, and then this is our sheathing that's gonna sit on top of it. But what we're doing is we're dropping down our rafter. So I'm gonna have a rafter that sits just like this. This is our 2x12, okay? Then we're gonna have our purlins that go up on top of this rafter, and our sheathing is applied directly to that. So these are 2x4s, okay? This is our 2x12. So hopefully this is making sense. And then this is our sheathing. And we do sheathing on a porch because we just want to help support snow load coming off, giving the steel a little bit of extra strength. Now, this is still a 412 pitch. So we know that. We also know that this is still going to be 9 feet. But what we don't know is, how do I get this? Because now, if I'm measuring out to 9 feet at a 412, all the way up here is 3 feet, and all the way out here is 9 feet. I only want to know this to this, okay? So what I need to do is, and once you understand triangles, this is super easy. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna figure out this dimension here so that I can subtract it from 3 feet. That will give me the height from this point to this point. So we're just gonna take this little cross section, okay? And I'm gonna draw this very quickly over here. So this is my 2x4, this is my rafter, this is my sheathing. What we know is that a 2x4 is 3.5 inches tall, right? Now, if I were to slide this 2x4 all the way up to this corner right here, it's gonna be the same. This is still 3.5 inches. And what I'm gonna do now is, because I know this is 3.5, I know I'm working with a 412 pitch. This triangle now has shown me that this is my run, this is my rise, This is the diagonal, and you know that because this is your 90-degree corner. So it always is based off of your 90-degree corner. 90-degree corner, my pitch cut, I always basically consider my long measurement, my run, my short measurement, my rise, because in a 4/12 pitch, it's obviously very skewed. As you get to let's say a 12/12, now your rise and run are the exact same. So we're gonna take the calculator, we're gonna enter in 3.5-inch run and a 4-inch pitch. That is gonna mean that this is 1 3/16, and my diagonal is 3 11/16. So now what I can do is back over here, I now just learned that this is 3 11/16. I'm gonna subtract that from 3 feet. 3 feet minus 3-inch, 11/16. So now this is 2'8", 5/16. And the reason that matters is because when I put my rafter in, I'm gonna measure up from the top of my 6x6 and I'm gonna set it at 2'8" and 5/16. But I still need to know what's my diagonal. How do I cut this? Because it's not the full 9 feet. Well, now that I learned this, I don't need my 9 foot because I have my 4/12 pitch and I have my rise of 2'8" and 5/16. So we're gonna go 2'8", 5/16 rise, 4-inch pitch. That's gonna give me a run of 8 foot, 0-inch, 15/16. And that is gonna go right there. So what that gives me now also is a diagonal of 8/6 and 3/16. Because like I said, now that I know 2 of the dimensions, I can get the other 4. So this, from this point to this point, is 8/6, 3/16. Pretty cool, right? Math is literally, when you understand it, when you know the concept, you can use it to figure out all these dimensions. In fact, I'm not gonna show you because it's all the same math, but I can also use the math to figure out right where this 2x4 goes. And you might just say, well, just go up 2 feet from the end. Yeah, that's fine, but I need to mark it from this point here. So I can use math to determine this triangle right here, which basically I think is 11 1/4, and then I can subtract 23 1/4, so I get centered on this 2x4 from, or 11 1/4 from 23 1/4. I don't remember the exact dimensions. I think it's, oh no, sorry, this is 10 1/2. I'm gonna get 12 3/4. The story being, I can use this trigonometry and a calculator very easily to determine all these measurements. And the reason that this is super important, okay? I was the guy 15 years ago that just took his tape measure out and I would put it up on the roof. I would have somebody hopefully hold it, otherwise I'd set a nail because I was working by myself, and I would go way down to the bottom where that rafter was gonna end, and I'd be like, 8'1 1/4. That is totally fine. You can do that. The problem is, A, you're not gonna be super accurate. Things aren't gonna be consistent. You're gonna take a lot longer. It's a lot harder to be accurate. And the name of the game is making money. Now, I just took all this time to do this. I'm not making money right now because I'm not getting work done, but in an average porch build, I come to the job site. These are very standard dimensions for me. I can whip this out and cut all these right here at the sawhorses and then go install them. So it's super efficient. And once you understand this, guys, I think it'll go a long way for you. And even if you're not doing post frame, just the concept of a right angle triangle in building and using the math to square something, to get a dimension, to frame something, it's invaluable. So I definitely recommend, if this all was somewhat made sense, but you're still confused, just watch it again or ask questions. And there's probably a lot better resources out there than what I just did. This is how my brain works. I don't know if it's gonna be how your brain works, but let's go ahead and cut one of these and we'll actually show it going up and making sense with all these numbers that we just made. All right, so for making my cuts on my rafter, what I always like to do is make the long hard cut first, because it seems like that's the most inaccurate cut to make, and that once I have that point established, which by the way, we are talking about this long cut here, once I have this point, I can very easily hook it and get my dimension measurement of my 8/6 3/16. So to make that cut, I think I told you guys, we can take our square, we can go 12 inches, and we can go 4 inches, like so, and I can make my mark, right? That's awesome. My good buddy Mark, and I've shared this before, he made this square. He only made a couple. I really wish he would make them more because I think contractors would really benefit. I literally love this thing, and the reason it's so valuable is because I take these little gauges, slide them to a dimension, I lock them in. They're kind of like a stair gauge that allows you to do repetitive cuts very easily. However, these ones are next level because they have these little, I don't know, they point to a number on each side. So this one is pointing to 6, this one is pointing to 18. Now, if you think about it, 6 to 18 is the exact same ratio as 4 to 12. Basically what I did was I went 1.5 times 4 is 6, and 1.5 times 12 is 18. That way I have a 4/12 pitch still on this thing when I set it up, but what it's doing is I'm maximizing the distance of my my framing square so I can be as accurate as possible. That is why I do not use this, because it's only a 7-inch mark. So this thing is invaluable. It will work on any pitch. I could change this very easily to a 9/12, a 4/12, whatever. So all I have to do is set this up. It slides right on my material. And I also, because I like to be accurate, I do grab a straight edge. We're just going to grab the Stabila, and I line it up on my square, and that is because I want a nice straight line cut all the way through. I can very easily also do this, and then watch this. Flip it over, and I can finish it on this side. I don't find that to be as accurate always because lumber has some inconsistencies, and going down a 2x like this, if my stair gauge is not in the exact perfect, like actually right here, I've got a, look at this. See this little inconsistency right here? If my stair gauge goes on that, it now changes the pitch. So I just try to stay consistent, and I do one straight pitch. So let's go ahead and make this cut. If you don't have one of those squares, you can come in here, and I could set this at 71.6 degrees because that's 90 minus 18.4, which is my 4/12, and that's going to give me my reverse pitch. But we don't have to do that. Everybody probably has one of these, or maybe their grandpa does in his workshop. All right, let's go ahead and make this cut real quick. All right, so we're starting to see our rafter. See that? 4/12 pitch, that's going to sit down on top of my ceiling framing. Now what we need to do is cut this top pitch. This is going to go against the wall. We know 8/6 3/16 from this point to this point. So we're going to hook it 8/6 3/16. Now we're going to grab our square. And once again, this is where if we just have one of these, we're going to line it up on the edge. We're going to go to 4/12, and this is going to be our line. Luckily, we have this nice Martinez once again, and I'm just going to take it on my mark. And actually, well, we'll just do this for now. Normally, I wouldn't need to do this. I would probably change this to a 4/12. It's going to shorten this up to about here, and I can usually get this whole thing, but for the sake of time, let's just go ahead and do this. Okay. Let's go ahead and make this cut. Okay, so now we have a rafter just like that. This should go right up against my wall over here, and it should sit nice and flush on the top. So let's go ahead, we'll put it up. I'm also going to go ahead and make, I'm going to make these marks, this 8-foot 0 15/16 and my 2/8 5/16 on the wall. so that I can ensure that these are sitting right where they're supposed to go. Now, disclaimer, all of this stuff is great. Math never lies, but when you're doing framing work with wood and humans, there's always bound to be minor error. Now, if you do your best during the framing stage of the building that you're attaching this rafter to, or setting your walls that you're building a roof system on top of, it should be very close. But there's a good chance, and I would say 95% of the time, we are very close to perfect, to hitting these marks, but it's not exact. And that's okay, because the goal is always to aim for perfection and I guess settle for probably better than most. So let's go ahead and we'll put this up. All right, so first thing that I'm going to do is make a plumb line where this rafter is going to go on top of my ceiling joist here. All right, now what I need to do is, remember that 2/8 5/16? Yeah. 2/8 5/16. If it's 3/16, I'll check before I go, but whatever. So I've got that dimension, that is where the top of my rafter should go. And then I need to get my 8-foot 15/16 out here at the end, and that is where the point of my rafter should go. Come on, tape measure. So 8-foot 15/16. And what I like to do is I'm just going to set a little shingle nail here, and it just helps keep my point from sliding out on me. So now in theory, if everything is good, I can set this to that nail, and that sucker will sit in perfectly. Can you guys see my 5/16 right here? See the mark? I don't know if you can see. If I hit this down, you'll start to see it, but it's right where I want it, right there. So the other thing to note is on the bottom here, this cut. To me, that really matters, because not only do I want them to look good, but the more that this is set in a perfect seat on top of this board, the stronger it's going to be. If it's only sitting on the tip and the cut is maybe the wrong pitch, it's not going to be as strong. You know, the problem with this, oh, thanks, buddy. The problem with this is that sometimes, you saw that. You saw how that maybe sucked in tight. We always crown our lumber on our ceiling. So there's a crown coming up in here, which means that probably the middle here is a little bit higher, hence why this is tight. I know the math is right. I know that this is good. And that is now a nice seated rafter here. And we will be perfect up there. So now this is a simple rafter. I'm set back so that when I do my purlins on top of this rafter, it will plane in perfect to my fascia. And that was all figured using the same exact mathematical theory that I showed you back on the sawhorses. So I just wanted to do a simple video. I've had a lot of people request how I cut the rafters. And if this was super confusing, obviously drop something down below in the comments and I can try to do a better one. I mean, I don't have a problem doing a 2-hour-long live video showing every minute detail, but I feel like that's not for everybody. It's a very small select few people, and if it's really something that people would want a more in-depth, but I feel like this is in-depth enough to show you guys the theory that you can then use, I mean, to build anything. I use my calculator app with rise, run, pitch cut to cut my steel on the sides of my buildings, to cut the roof on a hip or a valley. We use it to frame and to check square across the building. It is literally the #1 thing that I use to make sure we build as efficient and accurate as possible. So I hope this helps somebody out there, whether it's a DIY first-time builder or maybe somebody who's been a seasoned builder who just has never really known or understood the math to apply to their building. And maybe this will help them do just a little bit better. So with that, if you guys enjoyed this at all, hit the thumbs up. And you know, if you haven't already and you feel inclined to subscribe and make sure you're tuned in for more construction content, that would be awesome too. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get the rest of this porch built.